There are 7 Siege creators I've found who each meet the criteria for one of the 7 deadly sins: wrath, lust, sloth, envy, greed, pride, and gluttony. I'll start with one of the most physically destructive sins of them all, the sin of wrath. Wrath is defined as an uncontrollable anger. The Rainbow Six Siege content creator I've chosen to represent this sin is Depra. Depra was a Siege content creator before most people's time. He has since been banned by Ubisoft and Twitch. In fact, he was the first and only console streamer to be banned by Ubisoft purely for toxicity. Not only that, but he's actually been banned on Xbox and PS4 and PC for toxicity alone, 3 separate times. So what did he do and keep doing that was so toxic? To simplify, he not only team killed constantly, but he also was verbally abusive to his teammates. Here's a great example of what I mean.
Insertion in 10 seconds.
What happened to the other guy? He keeps leaving.
5 seconds to insertion.
I don't know, Jelly.
And I'm sorry, I'm doing bad this game.
You're doing terrible, and you shot me. I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
I have other accounts.
Yeah, I bet you have other accounts.
Go ahead and kill me. You're not gonna win anyway, so... Yep.
Now, here we go. Sorry.
The diffuser is now secured.
Hey, that.
A friendly fire.
That hole. Put 30 in a skull. You a Black History Month.
For context, that was a clip of him talking to a girl that he was actually queuing with. The crazy part about this was that he was mad at her for reinforcing an exterior wall to the basement of Consulate instead of letting him put 2 mirrors on a soft wall. So not only is he wrathful, but he's also terrible at the game. This exact clip was actually the reason for his initial ban, as seen here.
Yo!
Not only was he banned for toxicity, but on many other occasions as well, he's also done things that are way more toxic, like these clips here.
Yo, Castle, if you don't move the out of the way, listen, I'm gonna shoot your black. I don't know why the you're in my way. I don't need the fucking window, Castle. They gonna open fucking dumb. I'm gonna cast the window. They'll never get in here.
Asians in karaoke?
How many is in karaoke?
Oh, I got this. I'll bust
Hey, throw a fucking needle! Throw a Thatcher! Why am I still stepping on fucking needles?
Use all 3.
Now that you've seen why Ubisoft banned him, let's go over why most people hate him. It's not how he treats his teammates, but mostly how he actually treats women. Like in this screenshot where he says, Black Lives Matter, free Doki though, you got a BF question mark? What it do? Lamau wink, you know you want it, come on girl, and once you go black, you never go back. This would all be fine had the streamer in question not been trying to actively tell him no and avoid him. But Depra isn't even the most lustful person on this list, because we actually have someone who is much, much worse, which is the content creator I've chosen to represent the sin of lust. Lust can be defined as a very strong sexual desire for someone, often to the point of extremity. The Rainbow Six Siege content creator I've chosen for the sin of lust is Mixy R6. Mixy is one of the biggest content creators I'll be talking about in this video. Now, most of you probably don't even know who he is, but he somehow amassed over 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel before the scandal that would eventually lead to the destruction of his career. He was so big, in fact, that he even played against the likes of Jinxie. To find out exactly what happened, we first must understand the type of content creator that he was. Mixy was a console content creator that liked to host custom games. Through hosting custom games, he would meet a lot of players that he needed for his YouTube videos. Through this, he would use it as an excuse to open the conversation and start messaging these people. These people obviously were mostly women, and the bad part about that is that most of the console siege community is underage. So Mixy wasn't just messaging girls, but he was messaging underage girls through console. This is bad, for lack of a better word, and once it was leaked that he did this not only once, but on multiple occasions, he was in a lot of people's crosshairs. He not only stepped into controversy with creators over that, but also over being racist and saying the N-word on multiple occasions, as well as just downright admitting to cheating on multiple occasions. He did literally everything you should not do as a content creator. He has the Infinity Stones of how to get cancelled as a Siege creator, which is why in 2021, he would stop posting altogether and delete every single tweet regarding the drama on Twitter. This would be the wisest move in his entire ordeal, and he would leave, legally wise, completely unscathed. The same exact thing can be said for our next R6 content creator, who represents the sin of sloth. Sloth can be defined as a reluctance to do work or make an effort, otherwise known as laziness. The content creator I've chosen to represent this sin is Jovial as bread. Jovial was a console player like the rest of the people on this list. He would post occasionally and would gain a small following from a series he'd make of trying to get the #1 champion ranking on console. He would eventually be successful in doing so, but along the way people started to realize that his methods for doing so weren't all that fair. To see how, let's rewind all the way back to Ranked 1.0. Ranked 1.0 was different in that every season, players had to play 10 placement matches to see what rank they'd start as for the new season. This is unlike what we have right now in Ranked 2.0, where everyone starts in copper and works their way up. The way Jovian would get his unfair advantage was queuing with his 4 friends, all on alternate accounts. These accounts would be much lower elo. From there, he would be queued with low elo players and in turn would get low elo enemies. This made the game think that after absolutely stomping on these players and not losing a single placement match, that he was deserving of a higher placement and worse enemies to help him climb after the placements, making it to where he wouldn't have to try as hard to climb, or nearly as far. As someone who is trying to become the #1 champ live, you should strive to actually earn it. But this content creator was so slothful that he wanted to make it as easy on himself as possible, even to the point of using exploits that he didn't want anybody knowing about. After this was exposed, not much for him honestly changed. Most people knew he was doing it anyway in his tight circle, and it wasn't that bad of a thing to do in the first place compared to other things we'll be talking about in this video. The event that would ultimately kill his career though would be his attempt at switching games on his YouTube channel. When he tried uploading new content to his YouTube channel, it completely flopped, causing him to fall off the face of the earth. Had he have kept on working on Siege though, and not had a slothful nature, he might have actually been one of the greats to this day. Someone else who had amazing potential, but completely threw it all away, is our next content creator on this list, who represents the sin of envy. Envy is defined as a desire to have a quality, trait, or possession of somebody else, often leading to hate towards that person. The content creator I think perfectly represents this sin is none other than E2 Smooth. Now, if you watched Jinxie back in the day before he blew up to the #1 streamer spot, then you may know who I'm talking about here. This is due to the fact that a large portion of E2 Smooth's career is due to Jinxie putting his name out there. You see, E2 Smooth was just an ordinary kid who played Siege and would occasionally upload his clips to TikTok. The only thing about him was that he was absolutely terrible at the game. This would eventually blow him up and get his name out there because not only was he super bad at the game, but after a while of getting TikTok fame, he became super full of himself. This was due to a number of factors, but namely other creators wanted to play with him because he had a big name, and he took this as other creators wanting to play with him because he was good at the game. This caused E2 to build a crazy ego about him, so much so that when he was carried to champion with a 0.8 KD, he actually thought he was good at the game. This became such a glaring issue that if he felt threatened by anybody, he would immediately lash out at them due to envy and insecurity. This got so bad that any big streamer he would cause beef with. And even after Jinxie had put E2 on the map, it wasn't long until E2's envy of Jinxie's success started to make E2 hate Jinxie too. This got to a point where he bit the hand that fed him, leading to E2 lashing out at Jinxie for no reason on Twitter. This would turn not only other creators against him, but ultimately all of his supporters too. He had officially become delusional from his own envy, but also his own pride. The exact same thing can be said for the next content creator on this list, which represents the sin of pride. Pride can be defined as a deep pleasure of one's own self-worth, self-image, or accomplishments. The creator I think perfectly represents this definition of pride is Depra. Depra, otherwise known as Yardi, was a professional Siege player and is arguably the best Siege player on this list. Not only this, but he's the only PC player on this list, making him stand out a tad bit from the rest. What really made him stand out, however, wasn't how good he was, but how prideful he was. To explain just how bad it was, we need to take a look at his career in the first place. Now, I mentioned earlier that Yardi was a professional player, but he had actually been kicked off of a team for misconduct and toxicity to teammates, from the sole driving factor that he thought they were making bad decisions and that he knew better than them, not once considering his place, his job, or the fact that he might have just been wrong. Not to mention that fixing mistakes and doing it in a toxic manner isn't even his job, but his coach's job. This eventually got him kicked off of not just just one team though, not 2 teams, but actually 3 different teams. Rent Free, Disrupt Gaming, and XSET. He even went on to a 4th team known as Beast Coast, but after the team got disbanded and he was forced to quit, that didn't last long either. Not only had his prideful nature gotten him kicked off of teams, but it had also led to a large portion of Siege viewers to hate him as well, because he wasn't just toxic in a pro environment, but he was toxic on YouTube and in ranked too.
Fuck, you're a stupid nigger.
Wow.
I'm not playing with him, he just throws.
Clips like these would ultimately ruin his reputation, but fortunately, not for good. As of right now, Yardi has started to make a comeback after publicly apologizing and making TikToks. He's actually doing pretty well for himself. It seems like he's actually turning his life around and not falling into the same sin he once was. Someone who has never taken that chance though is the next creator on this list who represents the sin of greed. Greed is defined as an intense or selfish desire for something, especially wealth. Although in this case, wealth isn't what our creator was greedy for. This creator being Get Flanked. To find out why Get Flanked represents the sin of greed, we have to look at his history. Get Flanked was one of Siege's earliest content creators, making videos as early as the Siege beta. Because he was able to pioneer content creation for the game so early, this put him ahead of most other content creators. Keyword most. Because someone else that was doing just as well was another creator known as Rogue9. Rogue9 had been making videos and was very successful in doing so. Eventually they would cross paths and quickly become friends. But this would eventually lead to both of them leaving the internet forever. But we aren't quite there yet. Get Flanked and Rogue9 became friends and made a Siege podcast together called the Hot Breach Podcast. On this podcast, they talked about anything Siege related. Patch notes, operator balancing, Twitter drama, you name it, they talked about it. Because of the unfiltered relatability of this podcast, as well as them both having their own YouTube presence, this podcast did very well. So well, in fact, that Ubisoft invited them out to record an episode at a Ubisoft studio. But this is where everything would go wrong, and Get Flanked would show his true colors. When they arrived along with the Ubisoft staff, Rogue9 would eventually come to find out that the head of the event was actually, unfortunately, a girl that had friend-zoned him just a few weeks prior. This made Rogue9's time at the event living hell, as the staff that she spread rumors to would belittle him and disrespect him the entire time. With Get Flanked there, you'd think that he would have his business partner and his friends back, but it was actually the opposite. Get Flanked and his greed would use this as an opportunity to actually badmouth Rogue9 further to blend in with Ubisoft employees that were there. What this did for him was allow him to gain a better relationship with Ubisoft moving forward, as he would fit in more and do it at his friend's expense. We know this because Rogue9 has a lot of evidence that he did this. In this video titled Get Flanked Lied, and Macy J corrects his previous comment. This video is a 40-minute log rant that Rogue has on the entire situation that uses evidence and logic to disprove Get Flanked's video, where Get Flanked tried to justify everything that went on previously before there was ever drama on the internet, and disprove Rogue9 did.
You know that Thursday evening where I mysteriously didn't get informed about the dinner plans? That really never made any sense to me. Is it really all a coincidence that I was the only one who didn't know about the dinner plans and that I received no concrete answer from 4 different people I messaged? Is it really just chance that it's the very next day when the rude little comments and behaviors from Ubisoft staff towards me really started to escalate? Maybe Get Flanked secretly went out to dinner with the Ubisoft guys that night, and maybe he'd been passing on my private comments and discussions all along. Or maybe not. And you know what? There's more. As you will have seen from the messages I showed earlier, the final private discussion I had about the personal contact that I'd had before the workshop ended with an agreement to let the past be the past and to work together professionally going forward. But then on Friday, before the podcast was even done, this person blocked or deleted me on every single social media app that we'd connected on. Now, there are 2 possible explanations for this. Either the message from Monday evening about keeping things strictly professional going forward was just one more lie, and there'd been a plan all week long to wait until after the podcast to block me. Or the other alternative is something happened in the meantime that changed the situation. Something like Get Flanked going out to dinner with them the night before and dishing the dirt.
It's safe to say that Get Flanked let his greed get the best of him to better his relationship with Ubisoft. If you don't believe me as a cherry on top, he actually now works at Ubisoft and quit content creation entirely after this scandal. This is one of those cases with so much proof and evidence that it's only right to call it a fact. The same cannot be said for the next and final sin on this list, the sin of gluttony. The perfect fit I found for this sin is the content creator known as Anifex. Not much here needs to be said, but with that out of the way, check out this next video, and I'll see you there.